Hi there and welcome back. Singapore's social and economic policies, which work hand in hand, are long-term strategies that have been in place long before the 2011 general election. Well, this was a point made by Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister Tharman Shanmugaratnam at the SG50 Special Distinguished Lecture organised by the Economic Society of Singapore. He says what's unique about Singapore is that there is broad-based upliftment with jobs, rising incomes and homes for every Singaporean.
Without social strategies, without strategies that made it possible for people to develop their potential through education, without housing policies that gave everyone a sense of ownership and provided a sense of equity in our society, and it would have been impossible for our economy to have succeeded.
Mr. Tharman added that Singapore's policies have shifted over the years. The first 3 decades were focused on the basics: economic survival, job creation and providing education and housing. And the poor received few subsidies.
It worked because our economic strategies worked. Jobs were created, incomes did rise, and homes went up in value steadily as the economy improved. Social well-being went up. Without a whole array of social policies, but by just focusing on the fundamentals.
And Mr. Tharman says social policy came to the fore in the 1990s. The government rolled out policies such as the EduSave scheme for young Singaporeans and a Medifund for those who cannot afford hospital bills. They also introduced housing grants for the resale market to help more Singaporeans own homes.
But it was only in the last 10 years, starting from around 2006-2007, that we made a more decisive shift, a more decisive rebalancing, in order to ensure that we remained an inclusive society. We needed to mitigate inequality. We had seen a trend that began a decade earlier, starting from the mid-1990s, where inequality had risen, similar to the trend in most advanced countries. We needed to do more to mitigate inequality.
But Mr. Tharman noted that Singapore's level of inequality before taxes and government transfers is not particularly high by international standards.
The question then is what happens after taxes and transfers, because all governments do want to mitigate inequality, have some redistribution, in order to reduce it. And we do too. There are some countries which in fact achieve a very large reduction in their Gini coefficients, which is what this measures, through taxes and transfers. The classic cases are the Scandinavian economies, and to some extent if we look at the United Kingdom and some other European economies, they also see a significant reduction. But the first point we must recognize is that the reduction in inequality that they see and the reduction in their Gini coefficients goes hand in hand with a very heavy burden of taxation on their populations. And it's not just about taxing the rich. It is the broad middle class in these societies that pays a very high tax rate, consumption tax and income tax.
Singapore's next phase of development is to ensure that the country becomes a more inclusive and innovative society. Mr. Tharman says the government started putting in place strategies of developing inclusivity in a very determined way a decade ago, and it's not the result of events post-GE 2011. He spoke of support for the very young, starting with broad-based quality in the public school system. And since 2006, the government also started paying more attention to those who have had a weaker start in learning. In higher education, there's now a greater diversity of pathways to cater to different interests and learning styles. And when a person enters the workforce, there is Workfare, where the government tops up the wages of low-income workers. Even in housing, Mr. Tharman said the government went about in a very determined way to ensure homes remain affordable for low and middle-income couples. And in the senior years, CPF remains a critical pillar of support. He said the government also introduced features like the Pioneer Generation Package and the Permanent Silver Support Scheme for the low-income elderly.
The first thing you notice, of course, is that this has been a shift that started a full 10 years ago, and step by step, we moved up our support by intervening when people were young, by intervening in the working years, and increasingly now in the senior years. It's not just an innovation of the last 5 years. And I recognize, of course, that there's some political cunning in saying that this all came about because of GE 2011. I'm sorry, it didn't. The world did not start in 2011. We made very clear our intentions and our motivations in 2007. We made clear it was going to be a multi-year strategy, and step by step, starting from the kids when they're young, through working life, into the senior years, we've been moving towards a more inclusive society, step by step. And we intend to continue on this journey, learning from experience, improving where we can. But this is not a result of 2011.
And adding to that, Mr. Tharman spoke of the need for a more innovative society, for every company and person to unleash their innovative spirit, to move from adding value to creating value through research and development and new products. That's how Singapore will survive, said the Deputy Prime Minister. He says the country is already beginning to see some results. For example, there are aggressive schemes to support startups and help small and medium-sized enterprises upgrade and internationalize. He says the government will also take the lead to invest in all Singaporeans throughout their life.
This is why Skills Future is a major investment in our future, a major social and economic investment in our future. We are not anywhere near maximizing our potential. In fact, no country is near maximizing its potential, and we intend to be in the lead. By continuously investing in every Singaporean, not many of us, let's invest in every Singaporean. So we keep improving through life, keep learning something about ourselves we didn't know about, a strength, an ability, an interest. And we're going to provide the resources, the facility all around the island to make this possible.